are is the facilitators of the Energy Code Support Program here for Minnesota. So please know, put in your system if you get emails from Hope or Josh or Gil Rossmiller that it's not spam. We're just trying to pass along information to you all, let you know what's up and coming and what we have available. And I know we have a lot to get done today, and we are so excited to have you all here. So I'll let Josh go ahead and kick things off.
No problem. I'm like Hope said, we appreciate you joining for our inaugural class, our first class in a series of webinars to assist in understanding or helping your communities better reach your energy code compliance goals. Just as housekeeping, again, we've got the chat should be open and working, as well as the Q&A. This course has been, and we will make sure that all of our courses, I'm sure I'll work with the state to make sure I better say the taglines, right? But the course that you're taking has been approved for ICC, AIA, and DLI CEU credits. This is a 1-hour class approved for building officials, residential building contractor, remodeler, roofer, listed as building official and energy. So again, we'll talk about that more as we go about the rest of the conversation. But let's just go ahead and get started. We've got a lot of slides to get through, so hopefully we can. If not, a lot of them are just to kind of guide us in this conversation. Our mission here at the Minnesota Energy Code Support Program is to support, educate, and empower building officials throughout Minnesota in the construction of energy efficient buildings that benefit your environment, your community, right? That's our goal. Our goal is just to provide you the assistance, the information, and it's free. That's the free, the word that everyone likes to hear, right? This class today is being our first class. We wanted to take time to kind of introduce you to the concept of what we do, talk about some general resources that we'll be facilitating, showing, and providing to you. And then starting on the third Thursday of the month, we'll start in 2 weeks. We'll start with our traditional energy code training classes. One of the things that just really to me makes sense is that when we understand the why, this is a quote I learned a long time ago and I apply it to a lot of things in my life, but we understand the why, we can figure out the how. And the question as to why we're doing this is because we find it's really to support you, right? As communities, there's a variety of different resources out there to help, and we're just one of them trying to help provide this information. We're going to take some time and look through both various websites, maybe look at some grant information, the different tools and resources that we're going to help to provide both to architects, designers, code officials, anyone who's in the process from the community and working within the building safety arena. So we're going to start off. First things first. Our website is, as many of you probably already found, is www.minnesotaenergycodesupport.org. When you go to that website, this is still a work in progress. We are still adding features and elements continually. So always keep an eye out for it, but we're just going to walk through a few of the elements that you see on it today. When you go to our contact page, you'll see an opportunity there for you to input your information to basically just make sure we have your information available to us, and we'll send out those alerts. Now, we are a free resource to you, funded through a collaborative group of utilities in the Minnesota area, and we are not, we are statewide in our reach. We're going to host these classes and make them free and available to you. And so again, if you want more information, like Hope said, make sure that you are double check, make sure we're not getting in your spam. I know working for the government, a lot of times we got a lot of things that go to spam or go to our junk pile. So again, if you're always looking for that, that's where we'll find it. But again, you can always come back to our website for different information. When you look at that Connect with Us section, you'll see if you click on that, you drop down a little or resonate over top. I'm going to turn my laser pointer on. If you sit over top of this, you'll see a drop down that says Code Helpline. You click on Code Helpline, it'll take you to the Code Helpline. This is going to be another free resource we're going to provide to answer any questions you may have regarding the energy code. And it's prospective adoption, right, or enforcement. That's what we're here for, to help you to use our experience and collective experience to help you and to help guide conversations. Part of that, well, if you scroll down further, you'll see that we're going to have a list of frequently asked questions. That's where we're going to have some things that just kind of start to kind of nestle in and stick around. Maybe there's some specific questions that start to become prevalent. We'll start putting them in there, so maybe there'll be some frequently asked questions there for you. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to email us directly, email through the website, and we'll try and get back to you as quick as we can. Going back to that main page, you'll see our upcoming trainings. Again, many of you maybe have found those. When you click on if you can see that when you hover over that, you'll get upcoming trainings and events. What we've got there is our scheduled webinar series, right? I probably should have expanded this to make it a little easier to read, but that's okay. So there you'll see our list of different webinar trainings that we're going to be offering, as well as some options. If you are interested in having us come out, yes, the Q&A questions will be anonymous. So once we get those, unless someone adds a comment intentionally, the questions will be anonymous, and we'll keep that. Thanks for that question. Then what we'll also, so what you'll see when you go to that training section, you'll see our upcoming webinar series, as well as some options. So if you're interested in scheduling, coordinating, contacting us regarding us either doing an on-site best practices training or something else in that vein, click on one of those, send it to us, and then we can schedule that. Again, we're going to be providing those resources to you free. We're collaboratively working. We're collaborating with the different ICC chapters there in the state, as well as Region 3, to help make sure we provide as much opportunity for people to get the information that we can provide. When you look at those events, if you were to click on that upcoming events, you'll see a list of upcoming in-person events. Now, this one here that we've got scheduled at Hermantown is free. We're not charging anyone. We're going to be providing, I think, some small, maybe breakfast or lunch. I can't remember. But when you click over that, you slide over it, you'll start to see some information pop up as far as what the class is going to be doing, what it's going to be looking at. This class is going to be focused. It's a 4-hour training in person, looking at both the code, the compliance pass, as well as the commercial thermal envelope. Right now, we're focusing a lot on the new code, the 2024, that we all know is up and coming, ready, going to the publishers soon. If not, I think it might already be at the publishers. I think it's supposed to come out of the publishers in a couple of weeks, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll have that about the mid of May, that the books will become available. And just to tag on to that comment about that in-person training, that's the first part of a series that we're traveling around the state. So the first one will be in Hermantown. We're looking for the next one that'll be sometime the last week of the month. And what we'll do is the first one is talking about the specific code sections. Our next training will look at the design and plans and what should be on there. What should we make sure we collect at submittal? And then our third one will be, what should it look like? How should the thermal envelope and compliance path be implemented out in the field, and what it should look like and what we're looking for? And then we will repeat the series. So in case you miss something, you'll still be able to gather all the information. Thanks for letting me jump in there.
No problem. So one of the things is that when you click on that, if you were interested in registering for one of those events, if it's an event tied to another organization, let's say we're working with the state of, Region 3, then it will take you to that resource. If it's an event that we're putting on solely, again, it's going to ask you some information. The one thing that I think is the most important for us to get from you guys is your DLI number. That's what that arrow is pointing at, so that we can make sure we can appropriately reply back and send all that information back to the state once we have that list, that roster of who all attended. So again, if we go back to that, if you click on one of those webinars, you'll see a general image, a little bit of a detail, a link. When you go to that link, it'll give you the ability to see those sign up for those through Zoom. One of the questions you'll see at the bottom of that list of information is your DLI number. Again, if you provide, you will receive from us. So if when you're registering and you're able to put in your DLI number right off the bat, it saves that information for every future, anything that you click on or register from there. What you'll be getting, again, just as part of the understanding of the housekeeping piece of this, what you'll receive at the end of the session, after we've reviewed everybody to make sure that everyone's attended for the requisite amount of time, then you'll receive a certificate of training from us. On that training, it will list the ICC preferred provider course number, the AIA number, and the DLI number for that particular program. Usually with that, we'll also send in a separate email a list or a PDF of all the slides that are reviewed, right? So you'll get a handout from the class, you'll get a certificate. We'll generally ask you, if you do not, it's almost like a blanket email I send every time, asking you to submit to us your AIA or DLI number if we don't already have it, so that we can make sure we populate those rosters appropriately. So again, that's going to be what you'll receive. Usually, depending on how the day goes, it's usually that next day. But usually, if you have any questions, just feel free to send us an email. But you'll get an automatic email with that certificate at the end of the class. Again, other resources that we're working on and developing to assist is going to be our Energy Code Support newsletter. Again, that's going to be emailed out to those that are participating or provided us their information. It'll also be kept on the website in our resources page, so that you'll be able to find that. It includes a little reminder about what a circuit rider is, what we do as circuit riders to assist and educate, provide resources and training. There may be things like a little handy one-page. We try to generate this resource to be a one-page document or a series of one-page pieces. That way you can hand them out, put them on your counter at the office, give it to a contractor or someone in the community. Again, if we're looking at whole house mechanical systems or vented, unvented attics, those resources will exist, specifically tailored to the Minnesota codes, and then that's what they're going to be there for you to hand out and give out. Again, we'll also include a one-pager. This usually runs once every 2 months. It'll list all of our upcoming trainings and stuff like that. As well as, this is the flyer that we've generated for our Hermantown training at the end of the month. So again, a lot of different resources out there to help you that you can share as much as you want, whenever you can, to facilitate to make sure we get people the information that we have to share. Because one thing that we have figured out is that we try to celebrate success, right? We try to get out and get into the community. This project here was an education house as part of a parade of homes in another community we work with. And it was a great opportunity to showcase what thinking energy efficient can do for a project, right? It's all about how do we to celebrate that. We saw it at the beginning of the process. We were there a couple weeks ago and they had it again. Now that it's completed and fully done, and a lot of people forgot that was the house, but it was a beautiful home in that community. It saved them. We were just talking with people in that neighborhood. It was about a $500 a month savings was what they were able to demonstrate, almost $600 every month on their utility costs compared to some of the other surrounding houses that had just been built by, again, similar, the same building code, same expectations, just different designs and how they all work together. The question.
Yeah, I'm grabbing the questions for you, Josh.
Okay.
So okay.
I appreciate that.
No problem.
So one of the things we also like to do is we like to collaborate together, right? The same way we get together, we bring together our local building departments, our contractors, our design professionals. Sometimes it's just to have a good cup of coffee. And we try to have local coffee as much as we can. As I told you at the beginning, I love coffee. I think coffee's an all-day thing. And sometimes we use that to communicate. We work virtually, both in person. And sometimes we try to drive the concepts that we're talking about down to a level that are easier to understand. I added this picture here of the coffee cups because the same way we choose the type of coffee cup for our morning wake up, we can choose our insulation option that matches our needs. And so we try to really make sure that we make it relatable and understandable. It's easy to sometimes get lost in the code and get lost in that code geek mentality. And so that's one of those things where we as code professionals, we try to make sure that we bring it down to an understandable level. And whether we're choosing an insulated cup or or a paper cup, both are going to insulate our coffee differently. The same way that as we're going to see throughout this conversation and throughout the training and throughout the code, you'll see the different materials, whether we're talking a bad insulation or a closed cell foam, might actually insulate differently. So to kind of get us on the rest of this list of things we're going to talk about today, again, just to introduce our trainers, our instructors, you'll probably see the most are going to be Hope Medina, Gil Ross Miller, and myself, Josh Harmon. We come from a company named Shums Code Associates, and you can email us, and we'll have our emails at the end, as well as you can email us at mnecsp@shumscode.com. Again, you'll get a copy of all this at the end. And so if you have any questions, feel free to let us know. Today, we're going to look at as kind of a list of resources. And again, this is a first class. So we're just going to run through some of these very quickly. But we're going to look at a lot of what we're going to provide is going to be code training, technical support, identifying and helping you better identify funding resources, and then really getting on to the best practices that we see operating in the communities and across the country. We all understand that the Minnesota Building Code is established for the purpose of providing that basic and uniform performance standards, right? They're designed to look at things like safety and structural stability, light, ventilation, sanitation, energy conservation are all part of what the code as a whole is trying to get us towards. And so to facilitate that, the state establishes and adopts a commercial energy and a residential energy code. When we look at that commercial energy code, this is going to be that minimum code that governs the design and construction regarding the heat loss, elimination, climate control, and it's really looking at how does that building operate over its useful life, right? When we think about the building code as a whole, we're looking at how does that structurally establish a building for its useful life, and then we look at the energy code. How does that building sustain itself? How does it maintain the comfortability or the occupiable spaces within it throughout its useful life? Keeping an eye towards conservation. We've all been in situations, and not to get into the political side of it, or the policy-driven side of it, but we all have communities where the home is not the problem as residents age or as communities age. It's how much does it cost to still live there, right? It's the cost of habitation that really is a driving factor in a lot of the conversations that we have, on a lot of the things that the code's trying to identify. We're not asking that you build it different. We're just asking that you build it to code, right? And I think one thing that we'll identify over time is that quality of construction is really the most important thing that we'll see. We see you can put an R100 in a wall, but if you have not evaluated air leakage, that R100 is not going to do anything for you, right? Again, I experienced that in my own personal home. My kids had opened up a front window. We went to winter, didn't realize it was open. And guess what? I kept asking, why is it so cold in here? Oh, that's because the window's open, right? Simple things like that. The code is really trying to help us understand. We understand that this, overall, the commercial code is a standard designed for new buildings and elements, alterations to those commercial structures, and that the code does not address, there's a question of what it does and what it doesn't. We'll go over that as we talk about different code compliance sections, different concepts within the code. But, the commercial energy code does not apply to those IRC single family and two family dwellings, townhouses, and then certain residential multifamily structures under the 3 stories or fewer above grade, as well as we'll see and we'll talk about in our next session, different variety of different situations. So again, it helps us to understand what does not apply, what may apply, right? If we're looking at a multifamily, then we start to evaluate what are we looking at? Is it above grade? How many stories? That kind of thing. And then when does the code completely apply? Now, one of the things we think is important to remind ourselves and remind contractors we talk about a lot is that innovation is not a negative. It's not a 4-letter word. It's actually 10. But you get what I mean, right? Flexibility is a key concept to understanding and applying the energy code. When we see, and I understand we're talking, when we see a contractor or a project come in and they say, I've done it this way for 30 years. That's not exactly true, is it? It's not exactly an accurate statement. The same, we're not building the same style of structures. Now I'm going to throw out some numbers here because they're residential, but you got to get the idea. And the U.S. Bureau of Statistics has tracked buildings over a series of years, series of decades. And in the 50s, the average home was about 983 square feet, and it was about 292 square feet per person. I love to hear when a contractor comes in and says, I've been building this way for 50 years. Really? Because I remember the 80s, and the 80s, or, in the 70s, this is not what those houses look like. I can drive by a neighborhood and see those, right? But in the 80s, the average house was 1,740 square feet. And by the 90s, we moved up to 2,000. And by the 2000s, by the 2020s, we're now at a 2,400 square foot, 2,500 square foot house as an average, right? We all know, we've seen buildings and materials. We've seen a variety of different things. The materials that we use today are not the same. 2x4s we used back in the 40s, again, almost 80 years ago, are not the same. The 2x4s we used in the 80s are not the same as the ones we see today. And the code has reflected that. We can see the change in spans in some of those different materials. And there are new materials that we have today that we never thought about 40 years ago. So again, when we hear that comment that, it's something that I've done it this way forever, I know what I'm doing, technology has changed. It's also that some of these concepts, everybody wants to say that what the energy code and what the construction codes are doing is putting new things on me. Well, in all reality, air sealing is not a new concept, right? We've just had to rethink what we use just when we look at air sealing. Again, I took my son out to a school outing, and we went to a pioneer village last year. And one of the things, and actually my other son's going next week, one of the things we recognized was, even when we went out in the middle of the woods and we told the kids, hey, we want you to build a fort using what you got. Pretend you're a pioneer. And they picked up sticks and started stacking them around and making little boxes and making roofs, right? Kids didn't have building construction plans. But what I noticed was one of the groups started to take leaves. Where's the leaves? Bring me some leaves. And they started to stuff them between those sticks. When we asked them why they were doing that, I smiled, right? Wasn't my kid. But one of the kids said, well, we need to insulate it, keep the air out. Insulation and air sealing is not a new concept. It's just the material that we're using has changed. And so providing that flexibility is a key component, a key element of understanding what the codes do, right? And one of those key provisions that we identify in the Minnesota codes is section 1300.0110, which acknowledges that the building official can identify alternative materials, designs, and methods of construction when they satisfy and comply with the intent. The code is moving and progressing to a place where we're trying to not create that, tell me what to do and leave me alone. It's give me a baseline I need to get to, and I can get there. Again, if I had one contractor out of a million who said, if I told him I needed an R20 in the wall, he'd say, well, what if I get an R19 and I do this? No matter what you try to do, there's always going to be somebody or a project that's going to be right outside the bounds. And that's really what the when we talk about compliance paths next time, that's one of those things that we start to identify. But along that concept of innovation, and one of the things that we'll be assisting and helping provide is going to be a review of some of the different materials that we start to see, right? If we go back if we look at the average installation, when we think about insulation or have historically, we think of maybe a bad insulation. We think of things like denim. I always thought denim insulation was when we stuck Levi jeans in a wall. Apparently it's not, right? There's vermiculite, which is one of my favorite blown insulations, right? Because it's asbestos containing. What's wrong with that? There's a variety of different materials that used to exist and existed in construction. And as technology has changed, while we still have projects that use them, we've identified new resources. And one of those things that we'll provide and we'll talk about when we talk about wall insulation materials and material insulating options is going to be looking at the different variety of insulation materials, right? We're going to be looking at their relative R values. And so we see things like polyiso and expanded extruded polystyrene coming into the market, and responding to it, acknowledging that some of these systems provide more than one feature or function at a time. You know, we understand that part of what we're looking at is understanding those environmental, personal, and societal expectations, goals, and concerns. And so that's where we start to really see these types of trainings being helpful to understand and explain it to both the community and the contractor as to what we're trying to get and what we're trying to accomplish, because everybody has a goal and it's not always clearly defined, but that's where we work through the code and through our trainings as a resource. We see building officials as that resource, connecting those two. I personally, again, those of you who aren't aware already, May is Building Safety Month, and one of those things that we really identify and understand is the importance of week one's topic, which is this week, is understanding the mission, right? Understanding why we have building codes, why we have building safety expectations, and how does something like the energy code become a function of it, so that it's not this concept that gets lost. So again, we'll be reviewing those kinds of concepts over the next couple months and years, right? One of the things that we'll be doing, and we'll talk about this in greater detail in a couple of weeks. Again, today we're just kind of overviewing some things, is going through and identifying those compliance paths, what those basic alternatives are going to be within the building process. We're going to be looking at it, taking it step by step, going through both the building, all the different elements within the code, the systems, the sections. We're going to be identifying how we reference a particular design, the considerations that come into the design, what we evaluate as plans examiners, what we need to think about as inspectors when it comes to identifying climate zones and spaces, and are we using a non-residential conditioned space versus a semi-heated space, a non-conditioned space. All those calculations, all those code provisions will be identified, will be rehearsed, reviewed, discussed, and we'll have a lot of time to spend on that. This is one of those topics that, again, we can spend hours on, going through tables and charts, reviewing everything, and we will do that in those specific trainings. But that's one of those resources that we'll provide. And again, what we'll do is at the end of these classes every week, so at the end of every session every week, we'll take those videos and we'll upload those. Now, you won't be able to get CEUs for viewing those a second time, but we will make them available so that if you want to go back and review something, then you'll be able to do that. We want to make sure we provide you every available opportunity and resource we can. And so again, we'll be looking at concepts like the prescriptive the prescriptive compliance path, as well as the different trade-off processes. We'll be reviewing some of the concepts, right, of what is an R value and what is a U factor. What are they providing? What are they measuring? What are the technological or standards that the building science behind a concept, and what are we supposed to do when we don't have a value? Well, one of the things that, I always, there's going to be a lot of just opportunity. I'm just going to say it that way, for us to review a lot of different resources, information, historical and contemporary, to understand the concepts of energy code compliance. And then again, like I said, reviewing a variety of different materials that we can find. Part of, again, kind of moving forward, because I know we don't have all the time in the day, looking at technical support that we're wanting to share with you, make sure you understand and have access to. And some of this is going to be stuff that, again, we'll be reviewing multiple times. We understand that you don't get everything the first time, but a variety of things come in. One of those resources that we think is critical to share with you is going to be the U.S. Department of Energy's website, energycodes.gov. From that website, you can see a variety of different information from different resources like ResCheck, ComCheck, and other funding opportunities, as well as different details from building components and wall assemblies. One of the things we wanted to make sure that we shared with you was that at the energycodes.gov energycodes.gov. You'll have access. You can, if you go to that website, we have it here. You can have access to ComCheck. Now, what we saw on the website, I think it was yesterday, I noticed it. We noticed it, is that the 2023 Minnesota Energy Code is now supported by the new ComCheck web, right? So you'll be able to, now, if for those of you that don't have it, don't understand it, we'll review it over time, right? But the ComCheck does exist. ResCheck, these are resources to help designers and building contractors to understand the impacts of thermal envelopes on a particular system. And so a person would just log into this ComCheck, start the ComCheck, click on the button, and then what they would do is they would select at the top a community within Minnesota, and the code would provide that 2023 value. So again, this is really great resource for the state, and we will do some deep dives and walk you through it, both as designers and as building officials. I think, again, as a building official, I don't use it every day. I very rarely use it, but I at least understand the concept of it so that when I receive one, I can understand how better to evaluate it, right? And again, these are just a great way to take a step down and identify, code additions and where maybe some clarifications take place. So, oh, I've got a couple extra arrows that just showed up. Again, that's just showing the types of construction and then different elements or within within different sections within the code itself. Another great resource is going to be our regional energy efficiency offices. MIA is the regional energy offices. It's the Midwest Energy Efficiency Alliance. They do a lot of great resources. I know they've got an upcoming training. I think it's in July down in Cincinnati, Ohio. But I think the last one was in Indianapolis, and then it moves around. But again, that's a great resource, both of technology and financial resources. But again, we'll make sure that we get time and share their resources and connect the two together. The ICC is a great resource, and as we talked about, we've already been in contact with them about some upcoming availability of their printed versions of the Minnesota Commercial Energy Code. We participate regularly in the code development process. We'll talk about code development and standard development processes, and if you're not already a part of it, we're going to definitely, I'm going to personally definitely recommend that you participate. Code development is important. It also mirrors in a lot of ways the residential and commercial tags that we have, the technical advisory groups there in the state. And so we're going to refer back to some of them, and maybe again, you make sure that you as building officials and building safety community members understand the process and what all goes into it to get a code into an adoption and into enforcement. We've got a variety of different, I know we've got a few minutes left, a variety of technical resources we're going to we will read, showcase, highlight, draw your attention to. A lot of them are going to be manufacturer based. This is not going to be an opportunity for them to hawk their wares, but it's more about understanding some of the different associations that exist for the different manufacturers and resources. They'll provide different tools. One that we think is really helpful is they do a lot of the mathematics and a lot of the calculations that go into compression of different bad insulation. As an example here from the North American, from NAMA, the North American Insulation Manufacturers Association. Again, that's just going to be a resource that tells you if you're installing a system in a place, how is that going to affect its efficiency or its R value. Another one that you'll be looking at, again, from time to time is maybe some resources on different spray foams, new technology that's coming out on ignition barriers, or the role or the efficiency expectations or the potential use of different rigid insulations in a design. Again, these resources exist to assist us in understanding both as a builder, as a designer, and then understanding as a inspector, what am I looking at, and is it going to provide the impact that we're looking for it to provide through the code. Again, if I'm looking at a design, and I'm just going to use an example, if I'm looking at a design that says you need to have an the design's calling for an R20 rigid insulation on the exterior wall, and I go on site and I see an R20 cavity, back cavity installation. Is that the same? How are they affecting the building differently? So just by having that information, that technical knowledge will help me as a building inspector understand that this is not a simple conversion of 20 to 20. This is a change of systems and a change of impact that is important for us to understand. And then again, that's just one element of what we'll talk about. Really, for the most part, the majority of our trainings are going to focus on those first two, those three concepts, right? We're going to focus on code knowledge, technical elements, and then best practices for inspections and plan review, right? This next section on funding resources is really something we maybe hit once a year, that being today, right? Because it's one of those things that's more of that management or sustainability office or building officials maybe more interested in that. So it's really not a topic we generally bring up a lot. But we understand, and we have found in our conversations with communities across the country, and those of us that do this on a regular basis, understand that buildings cost, right? And that we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're just trying to make sure everybody knows where the wheel is. And the Appraisal Institute created the residential and commercial green and energy efficient addendums. And back in 2011, that was, think about that. That's over almost 13 years ago, right? This was a resource, because one of the questions we hear all the time from builders, and you probably hear it, is that, this isn't going to make me any money. I can't sell energy efficiency. Well, in reality, what the Appraisal Institute provides through this green addendum, and again, we're just showing you the residential on the screen, but there is a commercial, and it's in our resources page. We provide you a walkthrough of these documents and how to fill them out, how they get completed, right? And this may be something to, again, share out into your building community. But how do you equip or equivalize the installation of a window that's more energy efficient versus non? And so this is actually a form that's utilized by appraisers to compensate for the difference between an energy efficient and a non-energy efficient design or installation. So there are certain elements that are completed by different members of the construction process, whether they're from the builder, the designer, if you're using an energy rater, providing different features, functions, identifying. Again, this is a tool that's used by the builder, that's used by the appraiser, by the seller to help understand. And so that's where, again, we're trying to provide that resource. So that's not always smack them with the code. It's here's the other side of this, and how they may be able to identify the savings that they're going to be passing on. Again, like we said, that project we looked at last week was a lot of money, a lot of thought went into, not money, but a lot of thought went into the design of that duct system. And when you walked from room to room, one of the features that the builder kept bringing up, did you feel a difference? Could you tell that this was, that the thermostats and the controls are different, and then the operations are different, right? If you're looking at, a lot of times we think about its front cost and then don't think about the back cost, but it's $600, $700 a month is nothing to sneeze at when you get reduced energy bills, right? And so that's, again, a great resource. One thing that we usually look for or identify, or maybe different private funds and resources like Pace Nation, who, again, are out there trying to collaborate with different communities. I know that's was brought up at one of the MIA conferences. Industry funds from both, utility providers, insurance providers, different elements out there that are trying to support energy efficiency. And where their resources coming from, where they're, we'll provide at times different information from groups like the National Institute of Building Sciences to identify, where resources and different impacts are coming in, coordinating all of that. So that, again, you're aware of the conversation as a building official, not necessarily that you're fundamentally participating in it. But again, there's a lot of things out there that we're going to be bringing to you and helping. Because again, just so you know who I am and where I'm coming from, I was a building official for about 24 years. And I understand I don't have time to go to all those meetings and attend all those sessions. So one of those great resources that my association, my building officials association, and I learned was very helpful, was getting that kind of information from them. So I was at least tangentially aware, right? We want to make sure that you're aware of what's going on in the world, and that way that you can be knowledgeable and share those resources and demonstrate that as building officials, we are connected to reality. We're not just stuck in our code books. One of the things that we will identify and maybe at times help out or that we are aware of and try to share are different government resources that are out there to promote and facilitate code development, code implementation, and concepts like that. You know, there are a variety of different resources coming from groups like HUD, FEMA with the brick. Many of you may have, I don't know, we've not got to talk to many of you personally yet, but some of you may have been aware of the brick, the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities resources. A lot of it's going back and forth, and a lot of that's helping identify different ways to support building code compliance. Because as a society, we've understood and starting to really get to understand that building resilient it just means that a building will last given a reality, right? If there's a snowstorm, which I'm sure those of you in northern Minnesota have never experienced before, right? If there's a situation that comes up, how is that building going to operate, and how are we thinking about it as a whole? One thing that I always think about, an experience that I had was, again, we had an ice storm that took out power for 4 days. Well, because my home was built right, and because my home is a little bit newer, and I evaluated and took the extra time to make sure that it was properly sealed and properly insulated, not crazy, to the minimums of this that we had at the time. I was able to keep my home, to stay in my home, not to get out on the roads and have to become another safety liability, not to have to go to a warming facility, not to have to abandon my home for an unknown period of time. And so one of those things of being resilient is being able to keep people in their homes longer. And so one of those, that's again another outgrowth or another unintended positive that comes out of energy efficiency and code compliance. Again, not going crazy, not going beyond what code is asking, but just being code compliant can help a person in both bad weather, or if there's a fire. Or, you know, one of the things I always complain about it more than anything, is that my neighbors, because my house is built the way it is, I don't get to smell my neighbor's barbecue anymore, right? I don't smell the farm across the road when they spray their manure. I don't smell the fire, but what I do kind of miss is when they barbecue, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, Andy, where's my? If I had known we were barbecuing, I could have came over for a burger. But in all reality, in all seriousness, those are concepts that can affect, you know, when we think about indoor air quality, we think about the comfortability, we think about people who are affected by allergies, properly sealing, properly considering ventilation controls and how a building or a site is designed. Again, if we're thinking about, you know, commercial operations, you know, if every time my employees come to work, they are affected by allergens because I'm not properly evaluating air sealing details, that's going to affect productivity and affect the bottom dollar. And so those are, again, resources and conversations that will come out of it. And that's where the Department of Energy and other resources have really started to identify a variety of different, reading the Q&A. The Q&A question was, is DLI stand for driver's license information? No, that is your Department of Labor and Industry identification number. So sorry about that. If you don't if you don't know what a DLI is, then you probably won't want to put it in there. But again, that DLI refers to our Department of Labor and Industry licensing numbers. So again, part of what we'll also talk about, digression, sorry about that, is that we will also at times talk about maybe some grant writing tips and do a little off the cuff, just conversation about how to identify and do those things. Again, that's not something that the typical building inspector is going to care about. And so those are very few and far between, but when they have those opportunities, or if we get an interest in doing one, we can always share those resources. And that's one of those technical documents that really is helpful at times. But I think the one conversation that we as a team think is going to be the most supportive to you throughout this process is going to be that conversation surrounding best practices, right? When we start talking about innovative designs and materials, what are we seeing emerge out of the different communities around Minnesota? You know, not everything is going to be driven. Our program is not designed just to come right out and say our program is not designed to only support large communities or to only support rural communities. We have found a good balance, we think, and part of our goal is to every month get around to a different sector of Minnesota specifically to provide in-person training so that you have access to the same things that everyone can get at larger institutions. But again, how do we think about it as a building inspector doing the job or as a plan reviewer? How am I going to identify new concepts that are coming out? You know, it was not that long ago that we were just starting this concept of having, you know, steel frame structures, right? When are we going to be using a fiberglass versus a mineral wool? You know, what was it, 10, 15 years ago, you wouldn't have thought about ICF or insulated concrete forms used in a lot of construction, right? So these are concepts that we're starting to see take hold in a variety of different communities as they start to understand the potential impacts that different designs may have, access to different resources. And so that's part of what we're going to be providing throughout the process. The question in the chat, the question in the chat is whether or not the 24 Energy Code is available online yet. It is not yet. So again, what we were told is it will probably be available from the ICC's perspective. It won't be available as part of your Digital Codes Premium until probably mid-May is what we've been told. We are going to be providing, or not providing, we're going to be getting a couple versions of it just to have around. But again, that document in and of itself as part of the Digital Codes Premium, if that's what you're asking, is not available yet. But you can go on to DLI's website, identify the amendments, and do don't get me started, do the old school like I used to. That was my first job when I first started at the city, was take the code and go through and redline, cut, paste, and insert into a hard copy. But again, those are available online, but the actual completed document is not yet. I'd say about 2 weeks. And as soon as it comes available, we will make sure that we share that online, right? That we will get that. We will share that information to you, not the document, but share with you the availability of that document. So digression, sorry. And for those of you that aren't aware, just again, clarify, you can go to, I think it's codes.iccsafe.org, and you, as well as I know ASHRAE has a similar standard a website. I just memorized the codes, and you can see the free version of those codes there. I can't remember right off the top of my head if the state's website allows for that. But again, you can piece and parcel them together, but I don't think the actual completed printing is ready yet for digital release. Sorry, digression. It's the reality of working within the system, right? One of the things that when it comes to best practices is starting to, we do a lot of training across the country. And one of the conversations I actually just had about 2 hours ago was regarding mechanical system design. You know, those of you who maybe have been around a while, maybe have remembered the time when we used to size building systems, mechanical systems, by a simple cue card, right? A little cutout that said, oh, it's a 2-bedroom, it's going to get this size system. It's a 3-bedroom, it's going to get this. You know, if it fits within this box, that's the system we're going to apply. Or the one I personally approved or loved was when Murray, a contractor I knew named Murray Houston. Murray would walk in and said, well, that's going to work for that house. What do you mean, Murray? Well, I can just tell you, I've been doing this long enough. I know that system's going to work. So instead of following that older process, some of the better practices that we've identified are going to be, looking at how do projects get evaluated for using, maybe the manual J calculations, the manual S, the manual D, different calculations for residential versus commercial designs. How's that system going to is being designed given all the conditions that exist, right? If and looking at that collaboratively or collectively, because we understand that wall insulation does affect the importance or influences mechanical design, right? And we will have many a great long conversation about that in the future. Don't you worry about that. Again, part of this is again reinforcing the role of mechanical design in residential and commercial construction, so that we don't have, and I think a lot of times it's easier for me to pick on the residential than it is the commercial. But back in the good old days when grandma used to put up plastic over the windows at winter time, right? Because they didn't understand, they understood the process of stopping air movement through the system, but they didn't have the proper tools or recognition to move forward. So again, those are concepts. How are communities moving forward? How are we recognizing air leakage as a problem and evaluating the location maybe of ductwork within a system, and how we, again, deal with air leakage rates for ducts versus buildings? How do we understand those concepts, and what are we doing to provide best practices to move forward? One of the things, and again, some of these slides are just to give you a foreshadowing or an example of what we'll be talking about. But we'll be talking a lot about the building thermal envelope and its role, how insulation works, how insulation is not the only component when you consider a building's thermal envelope. What are the expectations of the code when it comes to documentation? One of the series that we love, that we've received a lot of interest in, is our Help Me Help You, or our Devil in the Details concepts, where we're really trying to explain to design professionals, right, the relationship between what they provide and what we need. And one of the conversations, I'll say it today, and I'll probably say it more, I know I'll say it more than once, because I love to think about it. But when as a building department, as a building official, one of the things I used to do a lot with my building department, one of those best practices I loved, was every once in a while we would get together, all of our inspectors with our plan review staff, and have an actual sit down conversation and talk about what we're not getting versus what we are getting, right? If I've got an inspector telling me I'm not getting this detail, again, whether we're talking energy or something else, it was a positive time to sit down once every month or two and say, okay, what do we need to talk about? What detail do we need? And then part of that conversation for me was then going and with my plan review staff and getting with some of our more traditional design professionals and say, hey, here's what we need from you. As a team, we are, one of the things I really think is fundamental to understand and to accept is that we are in this as part of the reason why the Minnesota Energy Code Support Program exists is because we recognize that we are a community working together to make the best community we can, right? Whether we're talking about the relationship between the designer, the builder, the plan reviewer, or the inspector, we're all in this together when it comes to how the community views our industry. No one's going to say or be able to say, I only blame the designer for this problem with my building, right? If there's a problem that materializes because of some deficiency, we're going to not blame just one person. We're blaming the entire industry. And that's where we as a team come together. And that's where the code comes together and identifies what are important features that need to be part of that expectation of code compliant construction. So again, that's going to be one of those things that we talk about. How does the code, this is one example of the thermal envelope depiction. What are we expecting to see in a building's design? And not only do we want to see it in an elevation, but we also want to see it from an overview perspective, because we'll start to talk about how some of those thermal lines need to be drawn to separate or distinguish between semi-heated and conditioned or non-conditioned areas, right? Or if we have fuel burning appliances, how does that affect the thermal envelope? Because we're bringing in unconditioned air, and we want to make sure that we protect that space from thermal loss or uncontrolled thermal loss at least. So again, we'll talk about those different ratings. We'll talk about the energy cost budget. We'll talk about all those compliance paths, how they affect a building. That, to me is, again, part of what, we are going to be providing to you as a resource. And again, what the resources that we think are going to be helpful. That just to be said is why we think it's really important that we have you as participants, as stakeholders, as parts of this process. Obviously, we can think all the things we want in the world, but we need to have communication with you. If there are things that you need from us, please let us know. If there are things that we can do better, we're always looking for better. This is kind of that end of the conversation. This is generally how most of the conversations end, just so you kind of have an idea. But as far as free upcoming webinars, here's a list of some different webinars we've got coming. We will not, because this is set on Thursdays, we will not be having a webinar on Independence Day. I know that some of you may be upset by that, but it's important that we celebrate our independence as a community. And so we're not going to have a code training that particular day. So make sure that you sign up. There was a little bit of a disconnect. Technology doesn't always work the way we think it does. So Zoom updated over the last week or so, and so it moves some things around. We've tried to adjust it, but one of the things that you will get usually, one of the things we just want to make sure that you're aware of is to pay attention. We will be having these free webinars on the first and third Thursday of every month at this same time, same bat time, same bat station, right? We want to make sure that you understand the first and third of every month. And you can always upload, double check, make sure that you're, if they're not already on your calendar. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. As far as our free in-person training, again, like Hope kind of alluded to, we're going to start that off down and up in Hermantown. And then that's going to be on the 31st. It's going to be from 8 o'clock to noon. Again, we're probably going to have some coffee at the beginning because I can't survive without coffee. And then we're going to probably have some time to really communicate, work together, talk about compliance paths, talk about the thermal envelope. Remember, register. It is a completely free event, and we want to make sure that you're there to participate. We are sending out notices to everybody that we can as far as building officials and building department teams. But if you have somebody that you think that might be helpful, again, an inspector or a contractor or design professional, please feel free to submit that information. This is, again, to be a resource to everyone participating in the building safety community. A reminder, again, of our code support helpline. You can ask us any question about the standards or the process. Let us help you and what you're doing to promote safe buildings in our communities. Again, at the end of every class, as you leave, you will be given a survey. So please it's a very simple survey. Take time to make sure you fill it out. The most important thing I get out of it, more than anything, is future topics. So again, this is going to be your best way to say, I would love to hear about this, or a deeper dive. Some of the, these classes, these 1 hour webinars are 1 hour. They're designed to be somewhat introductory, or for the most part, there are going to be some that are a little bit more deep dives. You'll see us call it a deep dive when it really gets technical. But what we really would like to know is if there's a topic that's really important, then we'll spend the time talking about it. We just want to make sure we do it and are effective in how we present that to you, and we respond to what you need, not what we think, right? I can think about a lot of things. That doesn't mean it's always right. And so with that, again, if you have any questions, I know Hope's been paying attention to the chat. I keep checking the Q&A. But if you have any questions, let us know. Let us help. Send us an email. We're always available. I know we're going to be in the process of, hopefully, it's our goal to reach out and meet each of you individually at some point throughout the process. Minnesota is a large state, and so we're gonna try to get out there, visit you personally, and make sure that we're providing you this information. But if nobody has any more comments, I'm going to let Hope make one last statement before I cut you loose. and then we start this process of sending you your paperwork.
Yeah, the only thing I'm gonna mention is one, thank you all for attending. But the next thing that I would love to present to you is anybody who happens to be in the Department of Transportation's District 1. In the last month of May, we would absolutely love to be able to come and have a friendly visit, kind of get a conversation going so we can determine what your needs are and start developing resources for that. And the way we do that is to have friendly visits and to share information. So with that, feel free to reach out to Josh or myself at any point, Gil, any one of us. And thank you all for attending. And we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.